At the outset, I would like to thank my dear friend Malcolm and Dr. Same for putting up this amazing show second time. And I'm sure this will grow every year. So I will be speaking on least impact spinal surgery during COVID-19 pandemic. Now, as we all know that COVID-19 pandemic had catastrophic effects, especially during the second wave. And my city, Pune, was a hotspot in India with most number of active cases and hospital admissions. And we had a very high mortality during that time. And there was shortage of all the resources. Impact on surgical practice was very widespread. We had to redeploy the workforce to cater to only COVID patients. All beds were converted to COVID beds in practically all hospitals. There was immense shortage of staff, scarcity of oxygen, ventilators, blood, canisters, medicines, cylinders, everything. And again, the prolonged treatment protocols of viral pneumonia meant that there was prolonged occupation of ICU and general beds, which again added to the shortage of already less number of beds. So as a surgeon, it was our duty to do triage and prioritize the patients with urgent and emergency procedure. And this needed a designated area for pre-admission COVID testing and assigning COVID and non-COVID facility accordingly. All the elective procedures were postponed and rescheduled, and non-urgent admissions were discouraged and managed conservatively as outpatients. Now, I would like to bring to your notice this very important original study by Sota Omugui, which states that origin of all pain is inflammation and inflammatory response. And sciatic pain is no different. It is inflammation around the spinal nerve. And as we all know that during and post SARS-CoV-2 infection, there was hyper-expression of inflammatory cytokines and patients landed up with cytokine storm. And these hyperinflammatory flares further precipitated the attacks of sciatic pain. And we saw a lot many patients with back pain and sciatic pain during that time. Adding fuel to flame, the exposure of nerve root to nucleus pulposus altered the sodium channel expression and its neural activity. And this further altered the axonal morphology and nerve root sensitivity, precipitating attacks of sciatic pain and further precipitated discogenic quada equina in some patients and requiring urgent surgery even during the COVID times. Now, as we all know that aerosol generating procedures like endotracheal intubation and oscillatory ventilation, which is required during the general anesthesia, had a very high risk of viral transmission, and this was a definite risk to the surgical team. Also, it had risk of precipitating the viral pneumonia with already COVID suffering patients, increasing the post-op need for intensive and high dependency unit monitoring of these patients. So in this scenario, transforaminal endoscopy under local anesthesia was a perfect solution. It offered a safe and very quick decompression with no post-op monitoring required in most of these patients. And patients could be discharged into isolation nursing immediately after surgery. So I will be presenting 3 case videos operated during COVID second wave. Now, for a healthy and functional surgical team, it needs adequate protection, and this needed special training in use of personal protection equipment, including myself and my team. We demarcated separate donning and doffing areas, and we followed all the protocols very strictly in that second wave. All the patients were assigned special private room with closed doors as compulsory single occupancy, and they were always masked with no exhalation valves. We had separate isolation areas for pre-operative and post-operative care. All the patients with pre-operatively screened with chest CT scans, RT-PCR test, blood test with markers, and a strict anesthetic evaluation by anesthesia specialist, COVID specialist, and pulmonologist was done. Now, operation theaters, usually we have positive pressure operation theaters with laminar airflow, but we cannot use them during the COVID times because it traps the harmful particles and they get disseminated into the external environment. So we had to use different operation theaters with low pressure or open pressure air pressure. Then we followed a strict disinfection and sterilization protocols during that time. And we had to use a separate transfer routes to and from the operation theater to isolation rooms. Now, surgical team had to be kept to a very minimum with only a surgeon, anesthetist, and one technician to operate the C-arm and other equipment. And a reserve staff was kept at the door for provisions. There was no scrub assistant during all these cases, so it was only 3-man show. After administrating the preoperative medication and prophylactic antibiotics and taking special separate consents for COVID and COVID treatment, these procedures were done as an awake procedure under local anesthesia. But my anesthetist also used a little bit of dexmedetomidine to comfort the patient, allay his anxiety, and relieve some pain. Draping was kept to minimum with only one last waterproof disposable drape. And no irrigation pump was used for all these endoscopic surgeries. Draining fluid was collected in a disposable container to avoid soiling of the surrounding environment. First case, this is a 36-year-old female with L5-S1 herniation on conservative treatment, but she had a COVID infection and then she developed a severe sciatic pain and back pain. And later on, she developed bladder disturbances and she started getting urination on slightest movement. So this is a small video showing the axial scan with a big extruded herniation in the left lateral recess and centrally and compressing the left S1 root. So the surgery was planned beforehand on a bone model, and the area demarcated in the red is the undersurface of the facet. So we decided to drill it endoscopically using an endoscopic burr under vision. So the endoscope was placed on the lateral aspect of the disc in the Cambridge triangle. And after drilling the undersurface of the facet, we could access the lateral recess and grab the extruded fragment out. With this mental imagery, we went ahead with this endoscopy. And now what you can see is an S1 facet, undersurface of S1 facet. And this is a slow speed endoscopy burr with which we did undercutting of that facet to gain access to the lateral recess. And as soon as we advanced inside through the window, we could see the extruded fragment in front of us. Hello, Mr. Van Johnson, could you please mute yourself? Thank you so much. And then we could grab this fragment out as a single piece. And it was a very big, bulky fragment, almost 6 centimeters in length. Then a 4.1 megahertz radio frequency bipolar probe was used to achieve hemostasis. And after that, we could very clearly visualize the decompressed thecal sac as well as the S1 root. So here you can see the S1 root as well as the dural sac, which is completely decompressed. As well as we can very well see transmitted pulsations into the L5 exiting root. So the surgical time required in this case was around 38 minutes. And by 40 to 45 minutes, the patient was out of operation theater. We could discharge her the same day to home isolation. Next case, another 40-year-old female. She was immediate post-COVID and she developed a down-migrated L4, L5 herniation and with left leg pain and weakness. So this was a high down-migrated extruded fragment into L4, L5, again in the left lateral recess. So for these cases, we need to do a bone window in the superolateral aspect of the pedicle and base of the superior articular process. So this is how we placed the endoscope in C-arm, and then the pedicle base was identified, and then a window was created in the bone. So after clearing the soft tissue from the bone and achieving hemostasis, again a slow speed endoscopy burr was used. Why slow speed? Because it creates a low bone dust, and again there is less aerosolization in these procedures. So after doing the window, we used a blunt hook probe to tease the fragment, extruded down migrated fragment out from the central canal. And then we could access the fragment and grab it with its base. And with a slow tugging movement, we could get the entire down migrated fragment out. As a surgeon, it is a very satisfying movement to get the entire herniation out in one go. So this is the free dura and the nerve seen through the bone window which we created. The amount of bone drilled is less than 3 millimeters, and it does not create any additional instability. Here also in this case, the surgical time was around 41 minutes, and it was done under local anesthesia, and patient was discharged the same day into home isolation. Third case, this was a 34-year-old male patient he was COVID-19 positive, and he developed an L1, L2 disc extrusion with chordae equina, which required an urgent decompression because he lost his bowel and bladder. So this was L1, L2 extruded herniation. This was his axial MRI. And we feel that in such patients, coming from posterior midline can further jeopardize the already compressed chordae equina, and transforaminal route offers a much better solution. So these are the C-arm pictures of how the endoscope was placed just under the posterior annulus. So this is the posterior annulus, which we see once we enter. And after achieving hemostasis, we could very well see the horizontal fibers of the posterior annulus. Then with an annular cutter, we create a small window. Now this window will give us access to the extruded disc fragment in the canal under the thecal sac. Again, with a blunt hook probe, we tease the fragment so that we can grab the tail. And once the tail is inside the disc, you can grab it by the base. And without losing the hold on the fragment, if we keep on tugging it slowly, we can get the entire extrusion. So we have to be very patient in such cases, because in case the fragment breaks, then we lose the connection, and then we have to do a more extensive surgery to retrieve the fragments. So this is the external view of that fragment, a very big one. Again, this was done under local anesthesia. This is the free decompressed thecal sac moving with the water column after the surgery. This patient was sent to isolation nursing and he recovered his bowel and bladder fortunately in 4 days time. And then he was sent home under supervision. And this is his picture almost after 10 to 12 days. He still has weakness, but he started walking, he's pain-free and bowel and bladder is recovered. So advantages of transforaminal endoscopy, all of us know it is safer than GA in active and post-COVID patients. There is same-day discharge or transfer to COVID isolation possible, minimal staffing requirement, easy disinfection and sterilization after the procedure, and it is the most cost-effective, resource-friendly with negligible post-operative requirements. Friends, our future is uncertain. We cannot predict how long this pandemic would last. Hospitals and surgeons shouldn't expect a return to pre-pandemic approaches to deliver surgical care. The many changes that we have instituted during this pandemic is the new reality. And as a surgical community, we must learn, accept these changes, and evolve ourselves. We need to imbibe more efficient and minimally invasive techniques in our practice. Thank you very much. I hope you have liked my presentation.